The Great Pyramid of Giza contains 2.6 million stone blocks. The average block weighs 2.5 tons. The heaviest, in the ceiling of the king's chamber, weigh 80 tons each. The structure rises 481 feet. Its 4 corners, measured by modern laser survey, differ from perfect by less than 2 centimeters. The gap between individual stones is often less than half a millimeter. You cannot fit a sheet of paper between them. And it was built without steel, without electricity, without anything you would find on a modern construction site. For over a century, the best engineers in the world have tried to explain how. They proposed ramps. The math didn't work. A ramp long enough to reach the upper levels at a workable angle would require as much material as the pyramid itself. You'd need to build another pyramid just to build the pyramid. They proposed spiral ramps. Those would cover the corners, the exact points builders needed to see continuously to maintain the structure's geometry. Every theory explained something. None explained everything. Here is what nobody told you. The answer was sitting in the hieroglyphs the entire time, carved into tomb walls, recorded in administrative texts, painted into a scene that archaeologists have been reproducing in textbooks for over 100 years. They just kept cutting off half the painting. The people who built it. Before the mechanism, the people. Because the story of how the pyramids were built is inseparable from the story of who built them. And that story has been distorted for decades by a narrative that serves no one. The ancient Egyptians were obsessive record keepers. They recorded tax payments, agricultural yields, military campaigns, daily worker rations, the names of the gangs who cut specific stone blocks, the dates boats arrived carrying granite from Aswan. They recorded worker absences, including in one preserved papyrus from the pyramid workers' settlement at Deir el-Medina, a man who was officially excused from work because he was, quote, brewing beer. These were not people who left things unrecorded. And what the records show is not a workforce of enslaved laborers driven by fear. The workers received wages and food rations, substantial by ancient standards, beer, medical care, housing. Workers injured on site received additional rations during recovery, the ancient equivalent of workers' compensation. They organized themselves into named gangs with specific roles. Some quarried stone, some transported it. Some, the most technically skilled, were designated specifically for placement, for positioning the blocks. Inside the sealed relieving chambers above the king's chamber, explorer Richard Howard-Vyse found in 1837 something painted on the walls. Not formal inscriptions commissioned by a pharaoh, something much more human. The names of the work gangs, written in the ancient equivalent of workers signing wet concrete. One gang called themselves Friends of Khufu. Another called themselves Drunkards of Menkaura. These were real people, with attitudes, and they were proud enough of their work to leave their names in a place no one was supposed to see for 4,000 years. The painting. Everyone misread. In 1880, archaeologists discovered the tomb of Djehutihotep, a regional governor who lived around 1900 BCE, on the main wall. One of the most detailed depictions of construction activity ever found in ancient Egypt. A massive alabaster statue, estimated at 60 tons, being transported on a sled. Workers pulling ropes, and a figure at the front pouring liquid from a vessel onto the ground ahead of the runners. This painting became famous. It was reproduced in textbooks, cited in academic papers, featured in documentaries. The lesson everyone took from it: the ancient Egyptians reduced friction by wetting the sand in front of sleds. In 2014, Researchers from the University of Amsterdam tested this and confirmed it. Wetting sand reduces the pulling force required by up to 50%. Headlines worldwide announced that science had finally solved the mystery of how Egyptians moved pyramid stones. Mystery solved. Everyone moved on. Except they had been looking at a cropped version of the painting for over 100 years. The full image, the version that exists in the actual tomb, contains additional figures and additional equipment at the rear of the sled that the standard reproductions consistently cut off. At the back of the sled, there are figures operating what appears to be a counterbalanced beam system. One end lower than the other, ropes connecting the raised end to the rear of the sled. A counterbalanced beam attached by ropes to the back of a heavy sled does something specific. It transfers load. It reduces the effective weight pressing down on the runners. It provides a second force vector working against gravity. This is not just lubrication. This is a compound mechanical system. And nobody noticed because everyone kept using the cropped version. The word nobody interrogated. In 2014, a separate team, Dr. Khaled El-Anani, working with Cairo University and French archaeologists, began a systematic linguistic analysis of technical vocabulary across the full body of administrative texts from Egypt's Old Kingdom period. The era when the Great Pyramids were built. They weren't specifically looking for lifting mechanisms. They were conducting a vocabulary study. They found a term, transliterated roughly as inat, that appears repeatedly in construction administrative texts. For decades, it had been translated generically as device or apparatus, a catch-all, the Egyptological equivalent of writing stuff in a margin and moving on. The new analysis found that inat appears with consistent modifiers, something with a fulcrum, something that rotates, something associated with counterweight, something that appears in multiple texts explicitly connected to the vertical movement of heavy stone, not a sled, not a ramp, a compound lever system with mechanical advantage built in through a rotating fulcrum. The answer had been in the administrative records for over a century of Egyptology, filed under the wrong vocabulary heading, quietly waiting. Then, in 2013, a French archaeological team discovered the oldest papyrus ever found at Wadi el-Jarf, an ancient harbor on the Red Sea coast, dating to the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, the man who built the Great Pyramid. It is a logbook kept by an official named Mirer, who supervised teams transporting limestone to Giza, a contemporary record of the pyramid's actual construction. In Mirer's technical descriptions of the construction site, he uses the inat vocabulary, specifically in a context that places the device at the point where stone blocks are being positioned vertically, not transported horizontally, lifted upward. What the evidence actually describes. When engineers with expertise in ancient mechanical systems examined the full painting, the vocabulary analysis, and the Wadi el-Jarf papyrus together, the picture that emerged was specific. A wooden crane, not identical to a modern construction crane, but functionally equivalent. A tall vertical mast, a horizontal boom arm that rotated on a pivot point near the top. One end of the boom held the stone block. The other end held a counterweight, possibly heavy stone, possibly a container of sand or water that could be adjusted for different loads. Workers operated ropes to control the rotation of the boom. The key is the counterweight, a 2.5-ton block. Your average pyramid stone requires an enormous amount of direct lifting force if you're pulling it straight up. But attach it to one end of a balanced boom with a counterweight on the other end, and you dramatically reduce the force required. The counterweight does a significant portion of the lifting work. Workers aren't fighting the full weight of the stone. They're managing a mechanically balanced system. This is not exotic technology. It is standard mechanical advantage. The same principle a child uses on a seesaw, scaled to an engineering challenge that staggers the modern imagination. The evidence from quarry tool marks and construction sequence analysis suggests the Egyptians operated multiple cranes simultaneously at different levels of the pyramid as it rose. A relay system. Each crane moving blocks the same vertical distance regardless of how tall the structure became. This solves one of the most persistent engineering puzzles about pyramid construction. How did productivity stay constant as the pyramid grew taller and transport distances increased? With a relay system, it did. Why it took this long? I want to be precise about something. What happened here was not suppression. Nobody made a decision to hide the truth about the pyramids. What happened was institutional momentum. The ramp theory had been dominant for so long that it shaped how researchers categorized everything that followed. When you have already decided the answer is ramps, you file evidence that doesn't fit ramps as anomalous, interesting but peripheral. A detail to be explained within the existing framework, not a challenge to the framework itself. The linguistic evidence was filed under vocabulary studies. The painting was consistently reproduced in its cropped version, showing only the element that confirmed existing theory. The Wadi el-Jarf papyrus is less than 15 years old, but the principles it confirms were inferable from other sources for much longer. There is also something more uncomfortable at play. The question of how the pyramids were built has been so thoroughly colonized by fringe theories, aliens, lost civilizations, mystical energy, that serious researchers became deeply cautious about proposing anything that sounds too surprising. If your research conclusion can be turned into a tabloid headline about extraterrestrials, you moderate your language, you qualify carefully, you become more conservative than the evidence warrants. The result is that the truth, which is far more interesting than aliens, has been undersold for decades. Because the truth requires acknowledging that people who lived 4,500 years ago, with wood and rope and stone and extraordinary intelligence, solved an engineering problem that still challenges the best minds in the modern world. That's not a convenient truth for a culture that prefers its ancient history to be either primitive or supernatural. Inside sealed chambers above the king's chamber, spaces designed never to be opened, never to be seen. Workers 4,500 years ago painted their names. Friends of Khufu, not engraved by royal commission, not placed for posterity, written informally, personally, by the people who built one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and wanted to leave something of themselves inside it. We have spent decades using the pyramids as evidence of the inexplicable, as proof that ancient human beings could not have achieved something this extraordinary without outside help. In doing so, we made the actual achievement smaller. Real humans built those pyramids, people who organized themselves into professional construction teams, with names and wages and medical care, and workers who got days off for brewing beer. People who developed a counterbalanced crane system that pushed the origin of mechanical engineering back by at least 1,000 years. People who maintained tolerances so precise that 4,500 years later, you still cannot fit a sheet of paper between the stones they placed. The hieroglyphs were always there. The painting was always there, complete, uncropped, showing the full mechanical system. The papyrus, written by a man named Merer, who watched the Great Pyramid being built and wrote it down in real time, was sitting in a Red Sea harbor, waiting to be found. We just weren't reading carefully enough. The answer was never supernatural, it was human. And that is the more astonishing story.